Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofit leadership and sustainability, where the passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact are celebrated. With your host, Jarrett Ransom, get ready to explore inspiring stories and game changing strategies of nonprofit leaders from across the sector. In this season, we're focusing on critical management challenges that are key to the long-term success of nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense, in-depth conversations with the real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and learn how to navigate and overcome the challenges that help build stronger, more sustainable organizations. Now, let's dive in and harness the collective power of our nonprofit networks to create lasting change.
Welcome back, friends, and of course, fellow nonprofit nerds. Today's episode is a personal one for me. I am joined by Deanna Peterson from Your Part-Time Controller. Deanna is someone I've had the honor of getting to know and work alongside in our local community. Deanna is a CPA who proudly calls herself a people accountant. She thrives on problem solving with both her team and clients, and she leads with authenticity, embracing her scrappy spirit and showing up as her true self. In our conversation, Deanna highlights the importance of flexibility and encourages us to seek abundance and explore those opportunities that might actually lie outside the box. She also shares current trends and key adaptations that organizations, especially those with federal funding, should be considering right now. Her refreshing perspective and her grounded leadership make this a truly meaningful conversation. But before we dive in, I want to express my sincere thanks to this season's podcast sponsors. Thank you to Bloomerang and Fundraising Academy at National University. Your support makes these important conversations possible. Now get ready to hear from Deanna about how she approaches leadership and sustainability. Deanna, I am so thrilled to have you here. For everyone listening, or maybe you're watching on YouTube, because we do put these videos up as well. Deanna Peterson is with me today. She joins from Your Part-Time Controller. Deanna, welcome and thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jarrett. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I am really looking forward to your insights. And as we were talking about you coming on as a guest, I've had the honor, the great privilege to talk to so many amazing rock stars in the sector. And I think you are also a rock star, but a little different because you are privy to so many different organizations. You are seeing what's happening like from a broader, spectrum, I think. So first of all, would you just share with us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your role at YPTC?
Of course. So my background is accounting. I'm a CPA, I'm an accountant, but I'm kind of a people accountant. So I love talking to people and working through problems. And, that's what I do as opposed to just sitting behind the desk and just wanting to look at numbers. So I'm a little bit of a different type of CPA. And I think that at Your Part-Time Controller, we have a lot of us people type accountants where we basically help nonprofits. We focus on supporting nonprofits to make sure they get the financial information they need to make effective decisions for their organization. We work across the nation, and right now we serve over 2,000 active clients. So over the last 30 plus years of our organization, we have solely focused on nonprofits, and we've been growing the entire time. So you're right. We have seen a lot of different things. We still do see a lot of different things. And we have this perspective that's maybe a little bit above the clouds, right? Whereas our clients are looking at their individual organization and their problems and feeling like maybe they're a little bit alone in the world. And so we're able to kind of bring that broader perspective and say, okay, this is where your financials are at. This is how we can help you. And this is, maybe you're not alone as much as you think.
And I think that's a very comforting message, right? Like we're not alone. I know I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it feels like, the whole world is against me, against the organization, against the mission. And it's like, how do I get out of this? So having that grander, perspective that you get to see, the staff at YPTC gets to see, again, just super valuable. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation. As we talk about the intersection of leadership and sustainability, I'm really curious. If you would start off, what does that look like in particular? What does leadership, what does sustainability look like today for the organizations you're working with in light of our current state of affairs?
Yeah, I think there's basically three things that have to be thought of, right? You have to be flexible, because what is true for us today might not be true for us tomorrow. We know things are changing, so we've got to be flexible. We've got to think about scenarios. What's worst case scenario? What's middle of the road? What's best case scenario? And at the same time, you have to surround yourself with people that don't have just a scarcity mindset, that have an abundance mindset, and think about opportunities outside the box in these situations to make the organization even better when we get out of this specific state of affairs that we're in right now.
That, as I'm like taking notes, because I'm like, yes, yes, and yes. I love those three things. Right. So really being flexible, scenario planning, and surrounding ourselves, with other people that think within an abundance mindset. I really know scarcity, I feel like, is a synonym for nonprofits, right? Like that has been the culture that so many of us have worked within, is this scarcity mentality. But if we can shift it and focus on abundance, focus on these out of the box opportunities that you mentioned, I think that's where, I don't know, dare I say, innovation takes place.
Exactly. And you have to be innovative, even in a nonprofit setting, because you have to think, okay, you put all my ducks in one little spot. If I put all my eggs in that basket, things are going to change. The only thing that we are guaranteed of in this life is that things are going to change. So if we are just focused on maybe government grants, or if we're just focused on that one foundation that has funded us for the last 10 years, or we're focused on that individual who has the abundance, that has shared their abundance with us for the last however many years, that is going to change eventually. So what are you going to do now to set yourself up for success later? Think through, okay, are there earned income opportunities? Are there other foundations that can align with our mission? What can we do to diversify this and get through in this time, and then also in the future, right? So we're thinking sustainability in the future, but you've got to address the issues today as well.
Yeah, I agree. And for leaders, and I define everyone as a leader, right? We either have the opportunity to be, the potential, and we are being that, I believe, at some way, shape, or form, at some level. I'm really curious, your leadership style. You mentioned that you are a people accountant. I wrote that down, right? You're a CPA, a people accountant. How does that impact your leadership style? And again, like with the whole thought process of our current state of affairs, the uncertainty from so many of the clients you're working with and your team is working with, how would you define your leadership style, and how is that working for you now?
Okay, so I would define my leadership style is authentic. I am who I am, and I bring my whole self to work. I'm collaborative, so I like to work with people. I like to hear other people's perspectives, and I think that it only makes us better. And then I am a little scrappy. If I need to get in and get my hands dirty and get things going, then I'll do that as well. So that's how I describe myself.
I think that's beautiful. And then there's nothing wrong with being scrappy. Again, I think that is something that many of us that have been in the sector for quite some time have learned, right? Like we've learned to be scrappy. I joke and say, like, all of my pins and my whole career have been gathered from conferences, right? Like, because nonprofits don't want to spend money on some basic, simple office supplies. So, we just collect them wherever we can.
Right, exactly. Sometimes you've got to be scrappy, you've got to be thrifty, you've got to figure things out. That doesn't take away the planning and the collaborativeness. I feel like you're better together, right? We are all better together. So that's the other thing with our nonprofits. If they're feeling like they're alone, it's time for them to kind of, okay, let's find another nonprofit that's kind of similar, talk to them. You're not in competition with them. collaborate, and maybe you guys can figure out a way to make each other stronger in the process.
Yeah, and in the spirit of elevating, lifting up the entire community, right? Like not feeling that we have to do it alone, but doing it together in a, more, I don't know, conducive way, streamlined way, cost-efficient way, doing it in, together in collaboration should absolutely be part of the equation. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I want to ask about again, you mentioned like the only constant is change, right? So when it comes to adapting nonprofits, these organizations to the changing economic as well as the social landscape, can you share any examples that you're seeing, your team is seeing when it comes to these adaptations right now? Like what's working for them? What are they trying on? I feel like it's not a one size fits all. So I'm curious what examples you can share.
Okay, so yes, we work with over 2,000 nonprofits across the country. And so we are seeing trends for sure of people just kind of being a little bit afraid, especially organizations that have in the past focused on federal funding. And so now is the time that those organizations are having to think outside the box a little bit, reach out and figure out what other funding sources could potentially be to continue to further their mission. So that comes back to that scenario planning, right? We're focusing on, okay, where are you at right now? What options and opportunities do you feel like are out there? And we run the numbers for them so they can look at things and slice and dice things however they want to see them. We can't make decisions for them, but we are also recommending people get lawyers if they need to, have those legal conversations. Don't just say, oh, okay, sure, I'm going to go in this other direction. Maybe it's time to talk to some experts and make sure that what's the word? You're defending yourself, you're standing up for yourself, and at the same time, figuring out what the next step is, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. I think now is the time, if we haven't done it before, to really lean into our support systems. You mentioned attorneys. Like, I think that is brilliant. Hopefully our listeners have one on their board, maybe not necessarily a nonprofit specific attorney,
Right.
but at least to have that mindset, that wherewithal. I'm working with an organization now. There's an attorney on the board. And so they're able to provide some, not legal advice, right? Because they're not retained by the organization, but at least that perspective, right? From a legal risk management type of assessment. And I find great value in that. Plus, some attorneys, I should say most attorneys know other attorneys, right? And so it's a great connection to have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's time to bring other perspectives in, other experts, to look at your situation and see what your options are, right? So
Yeah.
we recommend that. And then we also recommend, focusing on the realities, seeing where you're at, where you might need to cut some expenses. Like, can you get leaner and meaner in whatever way that is? Let's talk about that. So it's not just increasing your revenue, but it's also re-looking at your systems. Can you streamline things? How can you make things better? And it's only going to make things better in the future too, right? So you might be addressing this current crunch, but in the long run, the organization's going to be better for it anyway.
Speaking of better, operational efficiency, right? Like, I think we all want to improve our efficiency, in particular with operations, but we also want to make our team better. So I'm curious how you're seeing this balance, either within your own team or with your, organizations that you get to work with, Deanna. How are you or how are your clients balancing this desire and this need for operational efficiency during this time, but also the desire to invest in professional development for the team that is there to navigate these uncertain times?
So exactly, when you're trying to streamline things, you kind of have to think about, okay, what can we streamline? Where can we cut costs and not take away from our growth? And I think that professional development piece really is that growth. You're going to be investing in your people, and that's a long-term type investment. So I see the need to kind of rethink maybe the conferences are going to re-look at which professional development opportunities you're investing in, make sure that they're aligning specifically with where you want to go or where you want the team to go. But at the same time, maybe there's other efficiencies where you can streamline processes, decrease operational cost on the finance side, lean into technology, that kind of thing, in order to still allow that time to develop your leaders. Because if you don't develop your leaders, the organization isn't actually going to be sustainable on a people side, right? So you've got that people side sustainability and the financial side sustainability, and you have to balance it.
That is a great call out. And I appreciate that, right? Like sustainability isn't a singular, linear definition. We really have to think about it holistically. I also want to give a shout out because YPTC provides some great educational information. A lot of it is online without going through a paywall, right? Like it's very accessible. So check that out. And in addition to YPTC, I have seen an uptick of, I would call it professional development tools and resources, thanks to Google and the whole, World Wide Web, if we're still calling it that, or if I'm totally dating my age right now, but really from a place of like, there are so many free resources out there. I want our leaders to lean into that and not, I know that I see a lot of budgets, Deanna, you do too. Professional development is either slim or completely missing from a lot of these budgets. So that's something I'm seeing.
There are a lot of free resources, right? So like you said, YPTC, we have monthly webinars, live webinars where you can even chat with our team. There's also, we have the recordings on our website as well. Anything from scenario planning to federal funding to, how to use QuickBooks. All of those things are on our website for free. In addition, there's YouTube. When it comes to leadership growth, there's definitely books, right? You can dive into a leadership book and learn something that, you may not have to pay for that conference. Not to take away from the conferences though, because there's something about getting together with the people that are your peers, that are other leaders or other programmatic people or other accountants like me to dive in and learn from each other too. So I feel like there needs to be a mix of both.
I agree. I love that human connection in person, right? Having that ability. And I know the hybrid was a thing, during the height of COVID, but I'm still seeing like national groups getting together or cohorts kind of getting together, and then more local, connections meeting for coffee or lunch outside of that meeting. So I think there's a great way to make that happen. We just have to, I don't know, maybe be a little creative. So I appreciate your insight there. When it comes to sustainability for organizations, I'm really curious, what sustainability looks like. And I love that you said sustainability for the people as well as the mission. How are you defining sustainability? And maybe you can dive into that, previous comment. And then also, how are you seeing organizations making decisions with the focus of the sustainability, perhaps mission and people in mind?
Okay, so on the finance side, we always recommend, in order to be sustainable, you've got to have at least 3 to 6 months of cash on hand, which means if you're a $1 million budget organization, you're going to have between $250,000 to $500,000 of cash on hand to be able to ride the waves, right? Life has waves, and you've got to be able to ride those as they come and not get too anxious about them so that you can't see after the wave, right? So in order to be sustainable, you've got to be able to ride the wave. The other piece is to think about, on the finance side, revenue streams. This can also be on your people side too. Think about your programs, think about possibilities. Are there additional programmatic exchange transactions, fees for service type programs that are in line with your mission that can help diversify your revenue streams? Are you diving into only one foundation relationship? Do you need to expand those relationships and be able to show your impact to more funders? How are you going to be showing that impact? That goes back to your people. How are you getting this data? How are you telling your story so that people really understand what your heart is, what your mission is, what the organization's mission is, and how you're helping further that mission. You've got to be able to tell that story to diversify all of your funding. And that goes into your people, right? You've got to have the right people in the right seats to do that.
The diversification, I think, is key. And even, I mean, I've been around the block a few decades when it comes to this career and space, and seeing diversification really come in as a critical opportunity, critical moment. I don't know. I have inherited so many budgets, so many funding streams that weren't diversified.
Right.
And I think as soon as we can make diversifications at any level and continue that process, that's going to support us and the organization, right? And the entire community at large at such a greater way. So I appreciate you.
Kind of make or break. If you have that single stream of revenue, at some point it's going to break. So let's
absolutely
diversify it now.
Let's diversify it now. Well, Deanna, amazing. Time has flown. I know we could talk for hours, and we will at some point, because I am fortunate enough to have you right here in my community. We get the opportunity to meet on occasion at different nonprofit events, sometimes one-on-one lunches. So thank you for sharing your time, your insights. And if you would, I have two more questions, but the first one is, how can people learn more about you as well as the company that you're with? Obviously, YPTC. Where will people find you?
Yes, so you can always reach out to me by email, deanna.peterson@yptc.com. Our website has, like I said, a ton of resources. And then look me up on LinkedIn as well, Deanna Peterson. You'll find me and my curly hair. When you see that, then you'll know you got the right one. So yes, we are here to help the nonprofit sector, and anything to do with accounting. We help you make sure that you've got the numbers in place to make the right decisions.
Yeah, so critical. And then final, you have shared so many great nuggets of wisdom, nuggets of insight. Is there a singular takeaway or sage advice that you would like to leave our leaders that are listening today with before we say, farewell just for this conversation? Any final thoughts?
Final little thoughts. I think really it kind of goes back to when you're looking at your vision, and you want to have the right executors to execute that vision too, right? So you want to make sure that you have the right executor in the programs, the ops, and the finances. And if you don't feel like you're getting what you need out of that to move your vision forward, it might be time to kind of just look and see, how can I build that team up?
I like that. Thank you. Programs, ops, and admin. Were those the three buckets?
Programs, ops, and finances, because ops kind of is part of the admin. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Well, thank you for joining and sharing all of these, again, valuable insights. I know you have left our listeners with some really great things to think about. So Deanna, thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.